1 minute ago, Tom Cruise testifies in court on day 15 of Diddy trial. A silence finally shattered. It began with a murmur. Not the kind that trails casual conversation, but the kind that signals history is about to alter its course. It was day 15 of the high-profile Diddy trial, already defined by explosive testimonies and celebrity presence, when the judge paused, glanced at the docket, and spoke a name that made the air shift. "Next witness," he said. And then, unmistakably, Tom Cruise entered the courtroom. No cameras, no entourage, no Hollywood smile. Just Cruise's dark navy suit, no tie expression, unreadable, walking through the aisle like a man stepping into a storm he's waited years to face. The gallery, still reeling from Brad Pitt's testimony the day before, collectively leaned forward. Whispers fluttered like wings in the silence. Gasps punctuated the weight of what everyone was suddenly realizing. This wasn't a cameo. This was confrontation. Cruise took the stand, swore in, sat. And then, with the calm of a man who had rehearsed his pain in silence for decades, he began. "I didn't come here to be a headline," he said. "I came here to say what I should have said years ago." The courtroom, already tight with tension, seemed to contract further. Cruise's voice didn't shake. His gaze didn't flinch. But as he described the night he first stepped into Diddy's Los Angeles mansion, the ritual that unfolded, and the chilling initiation that followed, even the stenographers slowed. What Cruise revealed wasn't just scandalous, it was systemic. A secret basement behind a mahogany bookshelf. Black marble tiles. A tub that could hold 6 people. A silence that wasn't peace, it was power. And Diddy, barefoot, robed, whispering the same phrase to every guest, "Leave what burdens you in the water." And they did. I saw Tom Hanks. Jim Carrey? Steve Harvey Cruise said, pausing with surgical precision. Others I won't name yet. He detailed the smell of incense, the absence of speech, the oppressive stillness. And then, perhaps most chillingly, the moment Diddy approached him and said, "You're part of it now. Now you understand." From that moment, Cruise said the world he knew, one of scripts and cameras and crafted personas, fractured. This wasn't a one-night anomaly. It was the beginning of a pattern. After that, he kept calling Cruise testified. Not about films, about rebalance, about energy, about truth. And when Cruise pulled away, the world pulled back. Rumors spread, assistants vanished, anonymous packages arrived, scented oils, cryptic notes, even vials of bathwater. Still soaked in silence, one note read. Cruise admitted that the deeper the ritual pulled, the more desperate his need for escape became. "That's why I turned to Scientology," he said. "Not for enlightenment, for protection." A gasp rolled across the courtroom. The public narrative had always been spiritual quest. But this was flight. Cruise revealed documents, internal memos, audit fast tracks, immunity protocols. It wasn't spiritual curiosity that led him into Scientology's upper ranks. It was survival. "I wasn't seeking truth," he said. "I was hiding from him." He pointed straight at Diddy, and in that moment, the courtroom stopped being a legal arena. It became something else. A confessional. A reckoning. Cruise's voice dropped. "I never told anyone. Not my team. Not my family. I just kept the packages in a box. I still have them." The courtroom listened as he described the fear that shaped his years. Hotel suites disturbed only by black towels. Anonymous voicemails filtered through robotic disguises. A message burned into his memory. "You may wear the mask of a church, Tom, but I know what's underneath." Even the judge stiffened. Cruise detailed his slow unraveling, avoiding candles, refusing water rituals, throwing out robes. "I was erasing parts of my life," he said, "just to feel clean again." And yet, the shadow lingered. One juror pressed her hands to her face as Cruise recounted the 2008 incident a black towel folded neatly on his hotel tub overseas. A concierge swore it was a mistake, but Cruz knew better. It wasn't about affection, he said. It was about ownership. Then came the escalation. A photo sent to him himself sleeping, captured through a bedroom window. A fingerprint in wax on the card. A white envelope. No return address. That's when I knew, he said. This wasn't about friendship. This was about punishment. Cruz hired security, changed homes, purged his circle, but the ghost never left. At press events, strangers appeared. Former bath guests, always watching. And then during a 2010 wrap party for Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, a waiter handed him a drink and whispered, "Diddy misses you." Cruz turned. The man was gone. He stared directly at the judge. I made a quiet deal after that. Through intermediaries. They called it a truce. I called it a warning. The room fell deathly quiet. And then Cruz delivered the first of several devastating revelations. It wasn't just me, he said. There were others. Dozens. Maybe more. A silent ripple passed through the courtroom. Even Diddy, usually unreadable, blinked. Cruz leaned in steady. Measured. His power isn't his fame. It's his silence. The kind that spreads. The kind that swallows. And just like the part one of Cruz's testimony, ended not with closure, but with a question. How deep does the silence go? Tom Cruise's testimony didn't merely point fingers, it built a map. And as the courtroom resumed for Day 15's second session, that map began to unfold in chilling, methodical layers. He called it Diddy's Circle of Control. These gatherings, Cruz explained, they weren't spontaneous. They were scheduled. Orchestrated. Everyone had a role, even if they didn't know it. The structure of the events was disturbingly consistent. Invitations arrived not as emails or texts, but as physical envelopes, thick black, sealed with wax. Guests, often celebrities, influencers, rising stars, were met at the door. Their phones were taken, their watches removed. Each was handed a black towel and a contract and NDA, printed on obsidian cardstock, signed in silver ink. One clause read in poetic but ominous wording, "What enters water stays in silence." The room shifted uneasily as Cruz described the triadic format of these gatherings. Cleansing, silence, confession. In the marble-clad tub, each guest was instructed to whisper their shame into the steam. Diddy listened. Sometimes he recorded. Sometimes he repeated back their words in a soft, hypnotic voice. It wasn't about healing, Cruz said. It was about leverage. Shame was his currency. Then a specific night, 2006. Cruz described entering the room and finding someone already inside, a man crying naked, kneeling in the tub. A world-famous comedian. I won't say his name, Cruz added, but he never smiled the same after that night. The courtroom fell still. This wasn't sex. This wasn't celebration. This was submission. Cruz described the pattern that followed weeks later. Diddy would call, not to reminisce, to remind. Don't forget what you said in the steam. Or worse, I still have the tape if you want to talk. The murmurs in the gallery turned to outright discomfort. One juror dropped his pen. Even the bailiff shifted his weight. It was a cult, Cruz continued. But worse, because none of us believed we were in one until it was too late. He paused, looked directly at Diddy. You didn't offer connection. You offered control. You bathed people in silence and called it healing. Gasps followed, but Cruz wasn't done. He detailed the assignment's rituals that evolved into tasks. Appear at this party. Wear this robe. Speak this phrase in interviews. Public symbols of private obedience. He declined one such invitation of honor. Days later, a white box appeared on his doorstep, inside a photo of him asleep taken from outside his own home. A fingerprint in wax again. That's when I knew, he said. I couldn't outrun him, not alone. The room was icy. Cruz described hiring private security for the first time in his life, moving homes, changing numbers. His team underwent background sweeps. Still, the shadow moved. People from the bath nights appeared at unexpected places, press junkets, premieres, even at his church. Faces he didn't know, but who somehow always knew him. Then came the moment that broke his silence. 2017. On set, shooting a scene. A crew member handed him a prop. Scribbled faintly on the handle were the words, "Still wet from the last bath." I snapped, Cruz said. Walked off set. Went home. Opened a locked storage unit I hadn't touched in a decade. Inside, every towel, every vial, every note, every reminder. He burned it all, except one item. The original contract, the NDA. Signed by him, by Diddy, and by a third-party name redacted. It was entered into evidence. Ceremonial confidentiality, the clause read. Cruz looked to the jury. This wasn't just legal. It was spiritual. Symbolic, sinister. His voice lowered. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because silence is no longer survival. It's surrender. And I'm done surrendering. He stared at Diddy, then turned back to the judge. That line, "I'm done surrendering," landed like a verdict before the verdict. Not just against Diddy, but against every gatekeeper who heard whispers and looked away. The courtroom recessed again, but this time no one stood. They sat in stunned stillness, trying to process the shift in narrative. This wasn't about a celebrity scandal anymore. This was about an invisible empire built not on popularity, but on power. A ritual of obedience, a currency of secrets, and the silence that allowed it to grow. As part 2 ended, the camera panned to the jury. 12 strangers, now keepers of something deeper than testimony. Truth. Day 15 continued not with the expected legal wrangling or procedural banter, but with a witness-turned-narrator unraveling an unseen web. Tom Cruise sat forward in the witness chair, not slouched, not casual anchored. His tone shifted again, colder now, not reflective, resolute. It didn't end, he said, when I pulled away, and with those words the room entered darker territory. Cruz described the years that followed his silent departure from Diddy's inner circle. Not a clean break, not an escape, a slow haunt. It began with anonymous packages, always unmarked. Inside, black towels embroidered with the word cleanse, bath oils, scented exactly like the ones used in Diddy's basement, sometimes a single submerged rose in cloudy water. No notes, no names. I kept them all, Cruz admitted. Didn't tell my team, didn't tell my family, just stored them. Like relics of a past I didn't survive, but hadn't buried either. The jury's eyes never left him. Then the phone calls began. Blocked numbers, disguised voices. One in particular stuck with him. You may wear the mask of a church, Tom, but I know what's underneath. Cruz paused. His hands remained folded, but his jaw clenched visibly. It wasn't just fear, he said. It was psychological warfare. The court quieted as he recalled a 2008 overseas shoot. His hotel suite was perfect. Nothing amiss until he entered the bathroom. Folded neatly on the tub's edge, a black towel. No staff claimed it. No guest registered it. No mistake plausible. You have to understand, he told the court. This wasn't affection. This wasn't obsession. This was ownership. He needed to remind me he still held a piece of me. It took years, Cruz explained, to undo the mental chains. He stopped using candles, rejected all water-based rituals, tossed every robe he ever owned, symbolic erasures of a life no longer his. But what haunted him most, he said, wasn't what happened to him. It was what started happening to others. I began noticing, he said, new faces, hungry, talented, desperate, being pulled in, same script, same promises, same rituals, only they didn't have Scientology, or security, or legal firepower. They had hope, Cruz said. and Diddy fed on that. The courtroom absorbed each word like an exposed nerve. He recounted mentoring a young actor, nervous, eager, full of potential. Cruz introduced him to agents offered advice. Then one day, the kid vanished. Weeks later, someone spotted him at a Diddy retreat. When I finally heard from him again, Cruz said his voice wasn't his. He just said, "Thanks for everything, Tom. I see the path now." He never acted again, and he wasn't the only one. Musicians, influencers, assistants, bright flames that flickered, then disappeared. Cruz clenched his fists, then relaxed, composed again. That's when I started tracking it. The gallery tensed. Cruz revealed that he'd hired a former intelligence contractor to help him piece together a web flight's party, guest lists, contract copies, NDA metadata. He submitted the logs into evidence. Each event hosted by Diddy Cruz claimed followed a pattern. A bath network, same guests, same disappearances, same silence. He contacted 3 major studios anonymously, at first trying to sound the alarm. Only one responded. "You're not the first person to say this," an executive reportedly told him. "But you're the first one crazy enough to bring it to court." Cruz turned to the camera broadcasting the trial. "Well," he said, "I'm here. Call me crazy." But this ends now. It wasn't a quip. It was a line that will be remembered like testimony in a history book. And then, with the gravity of a man both scarred and sharpened by the ordeal, Cruz described the event that shattered any remaining ambiguity in his mind. A night in 2012. A private estate in the hills of Mulholland. The invitation was hand-delivered. Inside a photo of him and Diddy from 2005. Scrawled on the back in handwriting he recognized instantly. "You still owe me one last dip." He ignored it. But that night, his driver received directions. His security clearance was inexplicably overridden. At midnight, he arrived against every precaution. The estate was blue lit. Robes were neatly folded on chairs. In the center, a bath larger than any before, shaped like a Roman mosaic. He recognized some of the faces. Others were new. No words were spoken. Diddy entered last, dressed in white. He played a recording, a compilation of whispered confessions. Fragments of shame, fear, secrets. Voices from past bath nights. "I heard my own voice," Cruz said. Words I'd never spoken outside that room. People cried, not from pain, from forgetting they had ever confessed. Diddy had kept the tapes. He now played them back, to remind them. "That's when I realized," Cruz said slowly. "We no longer owned our truths. He did." The bath was filled. The guests entered. Tom Cruise walked out. "That was the night I understood," he said. "This wasn't a ritual. This was blackmail disguised." His tone didn't rise. It didn't need to. It carried the stillness of conviction. As the part ended, the judge called for recess. But even the bailiff waited, uncertain whether to move. Because in that courtroom, silence wasn't passive. It was power. The courtroom lights buzzed back to life, but the tension didn't fade. If anything, it condensed. People didn't just sit, they braced. Tom Cruise returned to the stand with the weight of Part 3 still hanging in the air. But now, he wasn't just unraveling his own trauma. He was revealing the architecture behind it. This wasn't just one man, Cruise said plainly. This was a network. Unofficial, undocumented, but deeply real. He described a cadre of individuals, stylists, trainers, assistants, agents quietly embedded in the entertainment industry. Most of them, Cruise claimed, appeared harmless. Background players. Never center stage, but always there, at the right moment, watching. You say his name, Cruise said they flinch. You question his actions, they change the subject. He paused, then added, they weren't just loyal, they were embedded. One instance stood out. A director was removed from a project abruptly after refusing a casting request, allegedly made by Diddy's team. No explanation. No paper trail. He doesn't threaten, Cruz said. He makes a call. The gallery shuddered. A system built not on law or contract but influence was now being named piece by piece. And then the turning point. On the set of Mission Impossible Fallout. A prop assistant someone Cruz had worked with before handed him a simple handle, faintly scribbled on its surface in nearly faded ink, still wet from the last bath. Cruz froze. He didn't yell, didn't react outwardly. He finished the take, walked off set, drove home, opened the storage unit he hadn't touched in over a decade. Inside were the physical remnants of his past with Diddy. Gifts, towels, letters, bottles, every item meticulously archived yet never confronted. I burned them all, he said. All but one. The original contract, the ceremonial NDA from his first ritual bath, signed by him, by Diddy, and by a third party whose name for now remained redacted. Cruz submitted it into evidence. The document was unlike anything the court had seen. Glossy black cardstock, silver signatures, one clause underlined in script ceremonial confidentiality, a binding in presence and spirit. This wasn't just legal, Cruz explained. It was spiritual, symbolic, and sinister. His eyes swept the jury. This document didn't protect me. It trapped me. Gasps rose in the gallery, but Cruz wasn't finished. His voice lowered, forcing the room to lean in. I'm not here to reclaim a reputation, he said. I'm here to dismantle a silence. Then came his final devastating claim, not from the past, but the present. Even now, he said, there are names I haven't spoken, because they're still in it. Some don't even realize. Some do and don't care. The room stilled. He described recent incidents, encounters at award shows, cryptic gestures, anonymous messages. A black feather left at his hotel. A scented envelope slipped under a trailer door. The silence isn't just Diddy's, Cruz said. It's cultural. It's institutional. It's industry-wide. He described the fear among victims, fear of ridicule, of being labeled dramatic, of being blacklisted. Do you know what the industry says, he asked rhetorically? They say, you're Tom Cruise. If it happened to you and you stayed silent, how could we speak up? And then the twist. Cruz revealed that after years of collecting data, he had compiled a full incident map connecting bath gatherings, media, leaks, disappearances, blacklisted projects. He named it the Bath Network. Each red dot represented a gathering, each black line a career that dimmed shortly after. The gallery stared at the screen as the diagram appeared. A web, sprawling, organized, operative. This isn't conspiracy, Cruz said calmly. It's infrastructure. He stared directly at the judge. You want to know how Hollywood protects predators? It doesn't need to. The silence does it for them. That was when he spoke the line that many said defined the entire trial. Diddy doesn't collect people. He collects obedience. The words hung in the air, heavy and precise. He described how artists had been pushed out, contracts canceled, mentions erased from media, not because they failed, but because they spoke. And finally, the moment that confirmed the magnitude of what Cruz was exposing. He held up the final page of the contract. It contained a clause labeled ceremonial witness, 3 signatures, 2 visible, the third redacted, but the initials burned into silver ink. And for the first time, the gallery realized this wasn't just Tom Cruise versus Diddy. This was an entire system on trial. Cruz looked to the jury. You think I'm exaggerating, he said. Then ask yourself why you've never heard any of this until now. The lights flickered. The judge adjusted his glasses, and with that, the courtroom prepared for what would be the final day of testimony. Because what came next wasn't survival, it was exposure. Day 16 of the Diddy trial began not with ceremony, but with silence. The kind of silence that precedes impact. The court had heard confessions reviewed, evidence traced diagrams of decay. But today, Tom Cruise returned not to testify further, but to deliver a closing reckoning. He sat straight, not hardened, but weathered and ready. What scared me most, he began, wasn't what happened to me. It was what I started seeing happen to others. The courtroom leaned forward as Cruise painted a new picture, not of rituals past, but of the quiet continuum of power still unfolding. There are new faces now, he said. Fresh talent. Young people who think they're being discovered when they're really being drafted. He described meeting a rising actor, someone he briefly mentored during a studio outreach program. Nervous, hungry, full of promise. Reminded me of myself, Cruise said softly. He introduced the actor to a few safe contacts, gave advice, then disappeared. Weeks later, word surfaced, the young actor had been seen at a retreat. Same address, same pattern. When I finally heard from him again, Cruise said he wasn't there anymore. His voice, his spark, it was gone. He just said, "Thanks for everything, Tom. I see the path now." He never worked again. Cruise swallowed, but his voice remained level. This wasn't an isolated story. This was a process. One by one, he said, artists, influencers, and hopefuls had vanished, not physically, but creatively. Ghosts of potential? And so he began to track it. He hired former analysts, cross-referenced travel logs, NDA filings, music video crews, guest lists, disappeared social media accounts. Every Bath event, every whisper left a digital fingerprint. He submitted them into evidence. Labeled event code, BN03 to BN157. You won't find these events on IMDb, he said, but they happened. Over and over. And then the detail that detonated the room. He had gone to the studios. Quietly, anonymously. At first, no one wanted to touch it, until one executive slipped. "You're not the first person to say this," they told him, "but you're the first one crazy enough to bring it to court." He looked straight into the camera, broadcasting the trial. "Well, I'm here," he said. "Call me crazy." But this ends now. Every camera light turned red. The gallery stilled. Not because of shock, but because of recognition. This wasn't spectacle anymore. It was truth. And then Cruise walked the courtroom through his final unreleased piece of evidence. One night in particular. A gathering. 2012. Mulholland Estate. Not like the others. He called it Renewal Night. A white envelope. A photograph of him and Diddy. On the back, one handwritten note, "You still owe me one last dip." He ignored it, but his driver received instructions. Security protocols failed. He arrived despite every layer of defense, inside dim blue lights, robes neatly folded, and a recording whispers. Confessions from past bath nights. His own voice played. They were reminders, Cruise said. He owned our secrets. We didn't. People entered the bath. Cruise didn't. I walked out. That was the night I realized this wasn't a ritual. It was insurance. And then he turned to the jury. This was blackmail, disguised as healing, marketed as rebirth. He sat back, steady, complete. But he had one final point. This isn't about Diddy alone, he said. This is about everyone who knew and stayed quiet. He described a culture of avoidance, executives deleting photos, artists unfollowing, managers pretending. You ask about him in a room, they look away. Cruise didn't. He spoke of the fear among survivors, the doubt, the shame. They think no one will believe them, that they'll be laughed off, canceled, forgotten. He paused, his voice firm, unwavering. Well, I believe them. And then the final image. A storage unit. He opened it for the last time. Inside everything. Towels, oils, robes, letters. Memories curated by silence. He burned them all, except one. The original contract. Signed. Dated. Witnessed. He entered it into the record. Black paper. Silver ink. One clause circled in crimson ceremonial confidentiality. Cruise stood. This isn't about revenge. I'm not here to rescue my name. I'm here to reclaim something bigger. He looked to the judge, then to the jury, then directly into the broadcast lens. Silence is no longer survival, it's surrender, and I'm done surrendering. The judge called for recess, but no one moved. Because in that moment, Tom Cruise didn't just testify. He detonated a truth bomb that would echo across Hollywood courts and culture for decades to come. And in that courtroom, on that day, silence finally lost.